How's it going, Starseekers? My name's Gotcake, and in this review we're going to be taking a look at Klaus, a puzzle platformer game which sees you playing as Klaus, a man who wakes up in a basement filled with various industrial contraptions with no recollection of how he ended up there or who he is. All he has to go by is the word Klaus tattooed on his arm and the sense that he must escape. Along the way he encounters many challenges, and as the story unfolds he begins to remember how he came to be in his current predicament. So as we begin at the main menu we can first check out the options, which feature the usual audio settings and vibration settings and nothing more. We can also check out the game's controls, which trust me, you're better off learning in game. From the main menu we can also access the extras menu, where we can rewatch any memories that we've unlocked, check out our gameplay stats and watch the game's credits. The game features both a story mode and arcade mode, and we'll begin first with the story. As the game begins we get a short opening sequence as our Robert De Niro lookalike Klaus wakes up, and then we begin the game's tutorial level. Here we learn that we move using the left analog stick and we can jump with the B button. We're also able to perform a double jump by pressing B again whilst in the air. We can also run by holding the Y button, which allows us to jump across larger gaps. Next we learn about how to operate the first of several contraptions, a door, by pressing ZR. As we continue onward we find a platform which can also be operated in the same way, but this time ZR locks onto the platform and we can move it up and down using our right analog stick. Further along we also encounter our first environmental hazard, spikes. Touching these will kill Klaus and teleporting back to the previous checkpoint, indicated by these circular arrows. There are many different hazards out there to end our life, but luckily the game is pretty liberal with its distribution of checkpoints. We also learn that we can manipulate the camera to better see our surroundings by holding the R button and moving the right analog stick. So as we continue through the level, white text appears disclosing Klaus's thoughts, and it acts as guidance in these first few areas, but later on this is used to narrate the story. At the end of each section we find a door which we can enter to move on to the next level. So the second level is an extension of the tutorial and introduces a few new gameplay elements and dangers. When we encounter several contraptions close together we can hold ZR and use the right thumbstick to switch between them. We also find terminals which will activate or deactivate different contraptions after we hack them by holding the A button. Following this we solve our first little puzzle, which involves moving a spiked platform out of our way and using another platform to block some blades being fired from wall cannons. Up ahead we notice a multicoloured circle pulsing invitingly, and touching this will trigger a secret level. Now secret levels feature more surreal environments and unique gameplay mechanics not found in the main game. In this first one you can only move to the left and must use the contraptions to move Klaus back to the right. You have to obtain the key in these secret levels to unlock the door at the end of them, and there you'll find a fragment of Klaus's memories. Each collected fragment fills a portion of the door, and collecting them all will allow you to view the full memory. Other secret levels in the game have mechanics such as low gravity, giant landscapes, or words replacing platforms and dangers, and completing these secret levels is entirely optional, and the unlocked memories expand on Klaus's backstory. So getting back to the main game, we complete the rest of the tutorial and arrive at our first key puzzle area. These require us to manipulate contraptions to move a key through the area to us, and once we obtain the key we can unlock the door leading to the level's exit. Levels feature multiple rooms, and usually you'll find a key puzzle at the end of each level, with the complexity increasing as the game goes on. So as we get into the main game and start working our way through its many platform filled levels, the text displaying Klaus's memories are drip fed to us as he slowly starts to make sense of what has happened to him and where he is. Additional gameplay mechanics such as blocks which crumble when we touch them, climbable ladders, and treadmills are introduced, as well as many other hazards. These include wall mounted buzzsaws, body melting acid, and chase sequences which are auto-scroller sections, which see us trying to keep ahead of the horizontal or vertical scrolling screen, and we die if it catches up to us. As we near the end of the first chapter, Klaus starts to hear noises and spots a large shadowy figure which appears to be following him. He eventually comes face to face with a hulking beast of a man known only as K1, who at first appears to attack Klaus. After beating him in the game's first boss fight, he retreats and you find him in the next level. From this point onward you gain control of K1 and the two continue onward together. You can control each character separately, switching between them using the L button or hold ZL to control them both simultaneously. K1 also has a bunch of additional abilities, such as several different punch attacks allowing him to break barriers with lights on, and destroy yellow terminals which power some contraptions. He can use a forward punch to destroy objects either side of him, an uppercut which also extends his jump height to break things above him, and a downward slam to smash his way through things below him. Whilst he can't perform a double jump, he's able to glide using his coat as a makeshift parachute, and his immense size and strength allows him to pick up Klaus and toss him like a baseball across pits and up to ledges that are too high to reach. So levels continue onward as before and feature a good variety of areas where you need to work together to progress. You'll also find other areas where each character must traverse specific sections alone to activate or smash terminals in order to allow the other character to progress. There are also occasions when the duo have to split up and complete levels on their own, and in these levels you gain an insight into their thoughts on one another. As you continue onward and progress through the game's 6 worlds, the story unfolds and Klaus learns the truth about his and K1's origins and the truth behind the facility in which he currently resides. The story takes some unexpected twists and turns and breaks the fourth wall on more than one occasion, but I'm not going to spoil those for you in this review, so instead I'll give you my thoughts on my gameplay experience with Klaus. To begin with, I'll say that as a platformer game, I thought Klaus was pretty good. There's some decent variety to level designs, and it's clear that plenty of thought was put into combining the game's many contraptions and environmental hazards to create plenty of challenging and varied areas to traverse. I also really liked the way the game played against the player in some sections, such as one where Klaus decided he'd had enough and reversed the game's controls and action buttons. I would however say that the game focused a little too much on the platforming elements and not enough on the puzzle side of things. Solutions to obstructions blocking progression were often obvious, and very little thought or problem solving was required to pass them. It would have been nice to see some more challenging puzzles, but personally I don't think the developers intended Klaus to be particularly challenging. There were very few moments in my playthrough that I actually had trouble completing on my first or second try, and the ample amount of checkpoints meant that failing was only a minor setback. Now the main issues I encountered with the platforming was firstly with the jumping. Unlike most platformers where letting go of a direction whilst in the air drops you downward, in Klaus you retain your forward momentum, which just makes jumping feel a little floaty and odd. You have to tap in the opposite direction to stop yourself, and I found myself dying often, especially in the early game due to this style of jumping. The second minor issue was when traversing through levels whilst controlling both characters. Due to the different jump mechanics and the size difference, it's sometimes difficult to move them as a pair. I often had to control characters separately to avoid losing one whilst platforming, and this meant completing the same platforming sections twice, which wasn't a major problem, it just slowed down progression a little. My fingers did get a little confused from time to time when switching between characters, and sometimes I found it difficult to target the right contraption to manipulate, but other than the few things I mentioned, I didn't encounter any other real issues. For the most part, platforming in the game feels tight, and you do become more proficient with the controls the further into the game you get. Now you're not going to find Super Meat Boy levels of difficulty in Klaus, and I found the game was more about enjoying the puzzle platforming experience while following the game's narrative. When it comes to the game's storyline, the developers have decided to do things differently with Klaus. Whilst most other games feature cutscenes between the levels to progress the game's story, in Klaus the story unfolds as snippets of text conveying Klaus's thoughts as you progress through the game. Now I found that there were both positives and negatives to this style of storytelling. The upside is that gameplay is not interrupted by lengthy cutscenes, and the story feels as much part of the game as its platforming and puzzle mechanics. This can also be good for people who aren't particularly interested in following the story. The downside is that although gameplay isn't broken by cutscenes, text often appears amid segments of tricky platforming, and it's unreadable whilst the camera is moving, so you still have to stop moving to read it. I often found that my attention was drawn away from the narrative in favour of progressing through areas, despite it being fed to me in small bite-sized chunks. Having said this though, the narrative is intriguing, thought-provoking, and even a little emotional at times, and the story of Klaus and K1's journey held my interest throughout my time playing the game. I especially like the developers' choice to incorporate you the player into the narrative and gameplay mechanics, and I felt it added a more unique personal touch to the game. I personally think the game's length and content is reasonable for the cost. There are a total of 6 worlds, 34 levels and 3 bosses, and it took me about 6 hours to complete the game without collecting all the memory pieces. Although I was given a key to review the game, I felt that I wouldn't have been disappointed paying the asking price for it. There were a lot of gameplay mechanics I didn't cover, mainly because I didn't want to spoil all the surprises, but I will say the developers did a really good job of introducing new ones at the right time to keep things fresh. Each world presented interesting and varied gameplay mechanics, and I felt the game and its story got better the further into it I got. Once you complete the main game, you can then check out the game's arcade mode, which allows you to replay any of the game's levels. And there's also an alternative ending to the game to reward those dedicated enough to access all of the secret areas and unlock all of Klaus's memories. So now we come to rating the game. Now I rate games between 1 and 5 stars, with a shovelware stamp of approval reserved for the worst games on the eShop. This rating is based on my own personal opinion on what a game has to offer in terms of gameplay and value for money to potential buyers. And for a rating I'd give Klaus 4 out of 5 stars. It's a solid puzzle platformer game with a decent storyline, and its level of difficulty feels like it would be accessible to even casual gamers. If you're a Super Meat Boy veteran looking for a challenge though, Klaus won't tick the box for you, but I would recommend giving it a go nonetheless, as I found it an all-round enjoyable experience. Now Klaus is one of the more expensive indie titles that I've reviewed on the channel, but you can get the game from the UK Switch eStore for £12.19p, or from the US eStore for $14.99. Alternatively, the game is also available on Steam and PlayStation 4. Now before I wrap this review up, I'd like to let those of you who've stuck with it know that if you're watching this before Friday the 26th of June 2020, I have one key to give away for the game. All that you've got to do to enter the draw to win it is firstly be subscribed to the channel, and secondly jump onto the Starseekers Discord and drop me a message telling me why you want the game. I'll then put up a video on Saturday the 27th of June announcing the winner. And that's it for this review of Klaus. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it and let me know your thoughts about it in the comments section below. And as always, subscribe to the channel to be notified of future Switch indie game reviews. For now though, I just want to say thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, game on.